So it's not an easy time. And I do want to help you to realize, so what this stress is doing to you, to your body. And it always starts with the brain. So if you understand the physiology of stress, you will understand that stress and our stress response only is in existence for one reason. And it's really, I don't know if this is a bad word, but it's sex. Okay. Seriously, if we didn't have a highly adaptive stress response, we would not have lived long enough to procreate. Because I want to take you back to when we were maybe cave people. And let's say you're walking along a trail and you come to a fork in the road and you're like, I could go left or I could go right. Let's say you go left and you walk past a den of saber-toothed, tigers. What happens? And I know you know this. Right away, the hypothalamus, which is always out there on surveillance looking for any potential threats. Okay. If you're a rubbernecker and you're on the highway and there's an accident there and you turn your head, that's because your hypothalamus is saying, uh-oh, something bad's over there and we're close enough, it might affect us. So your hypothalamus is always out there paying attention to our environment. And as soon as it sees a threat, like a saber-toothed tiger, it sends a message down to the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands secrete two things: adrenaline and cortisol. Now, here's the deal. We know that they both basically do the same thing. They increase your heart rate, your blood pressure, your respiratory rate. They mobilize glucose for energy, and that's your fight or flight response. But I want you to know that there is a difference between the two. So we know that stress on the body, there's a short-term effect of that adrenaline and cortisol, because you're either going to get away from the saber-toothed tiger or you're going to become lunch. There's a short-term effect, okay? Well, there's also a long-term effect. The difference between adrenaline and cortisol is this one thing. Adrenaline is in and out. You're either going to get away or you're going to be there, mealtime. But cortisol hangs out for a while, just in case saber-toothed tiger comes back. So here's the effects on the body, the long-term effects from cortisol. On your blood vessels, cortisol builds up and it starts leaving scars on your inside of your blood vessels. And we know that people who have high stress, high cortisol levels end up having more cardiovascular disease and strokes. We also know that your immune system can be damaged from the effects of cortisol, because it sort of like screws up your blueprint for your white blood cells, okay? And then the body attacks itself. When you see people who have an autoimmune disorder, studies show that people who have high stress, high levels of cortisol, have more autoimmune. So I look at the people who are coming in with Crohn's disease and lupus and all of these other disorders. Could there be a relationship to unresolved stress? We know that cortisol affects memory. So your hippocampus is your memory center. Well, your hippocampus is studded with cortisol receptors like cloves on a Christmas ham. And you might say, why would I want cortisol to be attracted to like my hippocampus? Well, I want you to think about this. If you're 3 years old and you touch a hot stove, you're going to want to remember that. It's designed to protect us. However, when too much cortisol is circulating in the body, it can clog your hippocampus. And the things that are affected in particular with your memory are things like math, language, concentration, and even problem-solving skills. And I'm thinking about, if you're working in healthcare, you really don't want to have an issue with your problem-solving skills. And here's what here's what scares me a little bit related to memory. We know that women between the ages of 35 and 55, where they have most of their stress during that period of time, have a 21% increased chance of ending up with Alzheimer's type dementia. And here's why. Your brain has these little housekeepers that go in and clean out the gunk in between your neurons. And we know that we need to clean out that gunk, especially while we sleep. Well, when you have too much cortisol, the gunk doesn't get cleaned out. It cannot do that because cortisol gets in the way. Now, we're talking about saber-toothed tigers. We're talking about, you're going to get away from the tiger. You're going to become lunch. Well, we don't really have saber-toothed tigers. Although if any of you have watched the Tiger King, you know that there are probably more tigers in this country than you realize. I know I did. But when you think about the tigers in our world right now, all right, you're in a surgical center and all of a sudden you're told that you're closing. That's your tiger. Or you're a manager and you've worked every single day for the last 6 weeks because you can't leave your staff and you have these added demands of moving departments. You were a medical oncology unit. Now you're converting to a COVID positive unit and you've got to make those changes. I've talked to so many leaders who have said, yeah, I haven't had a day off in 6 weeks. So that's your tiger. Or what if you come into work, you're on a unit that's not a COVID positive unit, but then you get pulled to one that is. Tiger after tiger. And what happens is this cortisol affects your ability to actually show up. Okay, I told you we were going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, but now I want to shift gears.